The rain hammered relentlessly against the windows, a deafening roar that seemed to reverberate through the entire house. The kitchen was cloaked in shadows, the dim light overhead flickering sporadically, casting jagged, dancing silhouettes on the walls. I sat at the table, staring into a cup of cold coffee, my fingers trembling as I held it. The unease gnawed at me like a parasite, growing stronger with every passing second. She wasn't my daughter. I had repeated the phrase in my mind so many times that it had begun to lose meaning. But no matter how much I tried to convince myself otherwise, the gnawing feeling remained. Something was terribly, inexplicably wrong. It had started 2 weeks ago. Lisa had brought our newborn baby home from the hospital. Emma was tiny, wrapped in a soft pink blanket that smelled of powder and innocence. Her delicate face was perfect, her tiny hands clutching at the air with a fragility that made me want to protect her from the world. In that moment, I thought I had found a new purpose in life. Emma was my daughter, my flesh and blood. But that belief didn't last. The first night was uneventful. Exhaustion weighed heavily on both Lisa and me. We took turns tending to Emma, feeding her, soothing her cries, and changing her diapers. She was a baby, after all, and babies cried. But by the second night, something shifted. It was subtle at first. I had been changing her diaper in the soft glow of the nursery lamp when I looked into her eyes. I froze. Baby's eyes are supposed to be soft and innocent, a pale shade of blue that hints at the purity of a new life. But Emma's eyes were dark. Too dark. Almost black, like pools of ink that seemed to swallow the light. There was something else, too, a coldness in her gaze that made my skin prickle. I told myself it was just the lighting. Maybe I was tired. Sleep deprivation can play tricks on the mind, right? But even as I tried to rationalize it, I couldn't shake the feeling of wrongness that had settled in my chest. The unease only grew as the days passed. On the third night, I was rocking Emma in the nursery, humming softly to her. Her cries had stopped, and for a moment, I thought she had drifted off to sleep. But then she lifted her head. Not in the wobbly, uncoordinated way of a newborn, but with deliberate precision. She turned to look at me, her gaze locking onto mine with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. "Hey there, sweetheart," I whispered, forcing a smile. "Daddy's got you." Emma didn't blink. Her tiny lips curled into what should have been a smile, but it wasn't. It was too sharp, too knowing. It felt as though she were mocking me, laughing at some private joke that only she understood. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at her, unable to look away. I didn't tell Lisa about it right away. She had enough on her plate, recovering from childbirth and adjusting to life with a newborn. But the incidents kept piling up. Emma's gaze grew more unnerving, her movements more deliberate. And then there were the sounds. Late at night, when the house was silent and Lisa was asleep, I would hear whispers. Faint, indistinct murmurs that seemed to come from the walls themselves. At first, I thought it was just the house settling, or maybe the wind outside. But the whispers grew louder, more persistent, until I couldn't ignore them anymore. One night, I woke up to the sound of laughter. It wasn't Lisa's, and it certainly wasn't mine. It was high-pitched and sharp, echoing through the house like the tinkling of broken glass. My heart raced as I sat up in bed, straining to listen. The laughter came again, louder this time, and I realized it was coming from the nursery. I stumbled out of bed, my legs trembling beneath me. The hallway stretched out before me, dark and foreboding, as I made my way to the nursery door. The laughter had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I pushed the door open, my breath catching in my throat. Emma was sitting up in her crib. Newborns can't do that. They don't have the strength or coordination. But there she was, her back perfectly straight, her tiny head tilted to the side as she stared at me. The room was bathed in the faint glow of moonlight streaming through the window, and her dark eyes seemed to gleam with an otherworldly light. "Emma?" I whispered, my voice trembling. She giggled. The sound was wrong. It wasn't the innocent coo of a baby discovering their voice. It was sharp, deliberate, almost mocking. And then she spoke. "Hi, Daddy." The words hit me like a physical blow. My mind reeled, struggling to process what I had just heard. Babies don't talk. It's impossible. But Emma's voice had been clear, her tone almost sing-song, as if she were playing a game. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. What did you say?" Emma's smile widened, stretching impossibly across her tiny face. "I'm not your daughter, Daddy. I'm not your little girl." The room seemed to tilt around me as panic surged through my body. My heart pounded in my ears, and my hands shook uncontrollably. I turned and fled the nursery, slamming the door shut behind me. My breath came in short, ragged gasps as I leaned against the wall, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her dark, empty eyes staring back at me. I heard her voice, those chilling words replaying in my mind like a broken record. The next morning, I tried to talk to Lisa about it. She was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee, her face pale and drawn. "Lisa, something's wrong with Emma," I said, my voice shaking. She's not normal." Lisa looked at me, her brow furrowing in concern. "Mark, what are you talking about?" "Last night, she spoke to me. She said she wasn't our daughter." "Lisa, I'm telling you, something is wrong with her." Lisa's expression softened, and she reached out to touch my hand. "Mark, you're exhausted. You've barely slept since we brought her home. You're imagining things." "I'm not," I snapped, pulling my hand away. "I know what I heard. I know what I saw. She's not our baby, Lisa." Lisa's eyes filled with tears, and she shook her head. "Don't say that. Don't you dare say that. She's our daughter, Mark. Our little girl. You're just tired. You need to rest." But rest wouldn't come. Not that night, or the nights that followed. The whispers grew louder, the laughter more frequent. And Emma's gaze, that dark, piercing gaze that seemed to see straight through me, it haunted me. I began to dread the nights, the hours when the house fell silent and the darkness pressed in. I couldn't escape the feeling that something was watching me, waiting for me to let my guard down. And then, one night, the whispers stopped. At first, I thought it was a blessing. The house was quiet, almost peaceful. But then I realized it was too quiet. The kind of silence that feels heavy, oppressive, like the calm before a storm. I was sitting in the living room, clutching a baseball bat, my eyes fixed on the hallway. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, each second stretching into an eternity. And then, I heard it. Footsteps. Light, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. They echoed down the hallway, growing louder as they approached. My grip tightened on the bat as my heart raced. The footsteps stopped just outside the living room door.